Welcome back to A Better Conversation, a podcast put on by Better Texas. As always, I'm your host, Chris Klement, joined by the man, the myth, the legend, the mustache, the beard, I don't know, all the good things, Mr. Kyle Mason.
Thank you. Yeah, the intro gets longer and longer. Before we get to the topics, I just want to ask the audience, please like and subscribe to the channel. And if you could just go one step farther for us, I think it'd make the biggest change and have the most impact would be to share the show to a friend or family. Say, hey, check this out. These are guys local from DFW, and they're looking to make an impact and get more voters out and really just keep you more well-informed.
Right. I mean, the whole point of this is to be able to have model good political conversations where you can disagree about things, where you can learn about things. Maybe it inspires you to act. So we definitely want to sharing this with other folks. Obviously, it helps the channel out, but also more importantly, it helps the general community become a little bit more well-informed. Like I said, get inspired, maybe take some actions, because there's a lot going on right now. There's a lot of clickbaity hot sports opinions. And really, there's a lot of people that don't know what the crap they're talking about. And we're not going to pretend like we're subject matter experts, but we're going to be honest with you with the fact that, yeah, there's some things like international relations that we're not subject matter experts on. Maybe you need to let the pie cool on the seal a little bit before you figure out if you like it or not.
I haven't heard that phrase in a really long time.
Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah. I've got like this idioms book, you know. I've got this idioms book. It's a lawyer thing, whatever.
Nice.
So obviously, big news right now has been for the last few days, action in Venezuela. You know what happened in Venezuela. I don't think that we need to talk to you about Trump coming in and just stealing Maduro. But, you know, I will say, and so Kyle, I'm really interested in what your thoughts are on this as having, I guess, currently being in the military, having been, you know, in the military, a Navy guy. Navy had some involvement in this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you feel about it? Is it something that gives you, you know, Iraq and Afghanistan flashbacks, or is it something that you see entirely different?
So my first reaction waking up in the morning is one of the few mornings I slept in over, you know, Christmas break, and I open my phone and I see this, and immediately I start having hot flashes, and it brought me right back to Iraq. I was like, this is a huge mistake. Immediate. I very much have grown up in the era of we invaded Iraq, it was a disaster. We invaded Afghanistan, it was a disaster. They did it all wrong. We've talked about this before, how it would have been better handled by like the CIA and small groups of individuals and not boots on the ground per se. But as the story has developed, it's like, okay, I can get behind this. Okay, I can see the strategic naval blockade. I can see why it is more important. Venezuela is so much more relevant to us being in this hemisphere than Iraq and Afghanistan on the other side of the planet. So I'm trying to take, you know, in this situation, there's a lot of absolutism going around, and it's a very nuanced situation of, you know, is this about drugs? Probably not, realistically. This is about oil, and you know what? Frankly, I'm happy that, you know, Trump just actually comes out, and from the beginning he said about the Middle East we should have kept their oil, and we should. But really, the end result is we cannot let China and Russia find allies in our hemisphere and then operate in and around and outside of that country right at our back door. So I think it sent a huge statement. I'm very happy that this happened, and it went off with absolutely no casualties on our side. So bravo, hats off to President Trump, Pete Hegseth, everyone that they've put in positions of authority to get this mission done.
I've gone through a range, right? Because there was the first part of me that, I mean, I remember watching on cable news when we went into Iraq. I remember as a little kid, the first time we went to Iraq, watching it on the cable news. So there's always that part of it, that surreal part of like turning on the TV and seeing history happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, you know, as a lawyer, I can often be sometimes legalistic. And so when I first looked at it, I was like, okay, well, I've got all sorts of international law concerns, right? I've got, you know, what authority, well, you know, what, you know, that we went in, all this sort of stuff. Like, this is what immediately floods to mind. But then once I was able to sit back and take sort of a sober reflection on it, I was like, well, this is kind of how you want your military used, right? I mean, just thinking about it in simplistic terms, you have a bad guy who was terrible as a leader. He was illegitimately leader of that country in Venezuela. He was doing terrible things that were causing problems to the U.S. He was palling around with our enemies. He was giving our enemies access to our hemisphere. You know, 70, 80% of the oil coming out of Venezuela is going to China. But there's also this gigantic oil reserve that's off the coast where we were already worried about whether Venezuela was going to go to war with its neighbors over control over that stuff.
Right.
Then you do have legit narco terrorism, smuggling people in, pushing drugs in, all that sort of stuff. And we just went and got them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just like we didn't take out the entire government. We didn't just completely destroy their military. We took the strikes that we needed. We went in. Maybe we had a little extra fun with Hugo Chavez's tomb. We went in, we took Maduro, and we basically said, hey, Kay, swearing your vice president, you know, they're next in line, but just realize that this could happen to you. Mm-hmm. Let's play nice. We're not going to sit here and put a bunch of troops in like we did in Iraq or Afghanistan, or at least we haven't yet. Hopefully that doesn't happen, obviously. That blows up the entire conversation right now.
Yeah.
But this whole, like, this is specifically it. We're just going to solve this problem. We're going to take this guy out, and we're going to try to let them reset. I like that, right? That's what you want to do. Same thing with Iran. Hey, we're just going to take out this one facility, right? Here's what we have a problem with. We don't want you building nukes. We want to make sure you're not building nukes. So we are going to destroy what we believe to be your nuclear facility, and then that's it. The rest of Iran, keep doing Iran things.
Right. Yeah.
I like that, as opposed to, you know, the sort of old school, we're going to invade your country and we're going to need to, you know, put 100,000 boots on the ground or something like that.
Yeah, getting the landing craft out. I remember the invasion of Iraq too, and it was I can remember General Schwarzkopf, I think his name was. Yeah. He was you know, videoing into CNN. He was on a very blurry video camera, and they're racing across the desert that was supposed to be impassable. I'll never forget that. And that's exactly what we don't need. And after going back and, you know, analyzing the Iraq invasion, and the biggest problem that they said they did was they destroyed the entire military, and then they destroyed the governing body, or the Ba'ath Party at the time.
Right.
They essentially made them all criminals, and so you pretty much left everyone with no choice other than to be a counterinsurgency. And so, you know, we've literally not done regime change, because it is essentially the same regime in power right now. But if that government in that form and fashion is willing to work with the United States and make deals with us, and actually, you know, it is what it is. Like, we are the dominant power in the world, and especially in this hemisphere. You happen to be our neighbor, you know, a short hop across a very small body of water.
Right.
And it's like, you got to play ball like that. It is what it is. And really, they should be thankful, because if they were someone like, you know, Taiwan or Vietnam, you have a very different neighbor that treats their neighbors very, very differently. So this could be, I mean, really, Venezuela has just sunk so low because of socialism and absolutely just being raided by that regime. Really, they only can go up. Like, pretty much they only can improve from this point. Yes, it technically could get worse, but their upside is so much more than their downside.
And that's where I think the only reason that this works is if it is regime change. I understand that you may have a lot of the same people that are staying in office, but
people can change.
If Venezuela doesn't change, right? If it doesn't become, you know, a democratic society, if it continues to pal around with our enemies, you know, if it keeps doing all this stuff, if it's just like, okay, well, Maduro's out, but the new person that's in there is doing all the same bad stuff that Maduro was doing.
Yeah.
Well, then it was just like a, you know, it was a fancy practice run, or a nice PR stunt or something like that. There does have to be lasting change in Venezuela for this to have been justified. I mean, I know technically, if it's just a law enforcement action and we apprehended Maduro, whatever Venezuela does is what they do. That's not how Trump's been talking about this at all. I don't think that's the expectation at all, especially when he's talked about the need for them to privatize their oil and gas industry again, right? I mean, so this is always the thing about, like, that frustrates me about the way a lot of leftists and Marxist apologists like to talk about this stuff. The oil and gas, the reserves in Venezuela were private, right? You did have companies developing them. It was a change in the status quo that put the government in charge of all that, made communism, socialism, put that in charge of the oil and gas reserves. Going back to how it originally was, I think is going to be a great thing for the people of Venezuela.
It's going to be a great thing. Yeah, and you know, Apologists will also, you know, they'll start citing a book that I do enjoy reading, Stories of an Economic Hitman, how, U.S. oil went into these countries and they saddled the countries with debt, and et cetera, et cetera. It's like, yeah, they saddled them with debt because we were putting billions of dollars of pipeline and deep oil wells and the export tunnels and terminals and all these things that need to happen. If anyone's ever been to Houston or Louisiana, you see it is a massive infrastructure to get black goo off of a boat and then through all the different things to get it into your car at Sam's Club. It's a very big process to happen. And so, yes, it takes billions of dollars, and all that could have easily continued to help the Venezuela people. However, after a few elections and essentially they were just started pillaging the oil and gas, all those profits. I mean, they have, which is really surprising to hear, and apparently this has been confirmed by many different sources, they have more, actual usable oil than, Saudi Arabia, which is like the gold standard for so many years. And so, I mean, that's awesome. We've had this short conversation. I guess let's get into it. And I actually am going to say that I am an expert when it comes to the international oil trade and why their oil is important, because I did a 4-minute ChatGPT breakdown. I said, give me the pros, give me the cons, why. So
I want to touch on one thing before we get into that.
Let's do it.
Before we go more local with it, talk about the impact that it has on Texas.
Yeah.
I do feel like we have seen the death of a very short era of supposed international law. Right, so we had this era coming out of World War II where we were going to have the UN, we were going to have these procedures, we were going to have nations, and there were certain things you were going to have to do before you took military action. You needed to get buy-in, you needed approvals, all this sort of stuff that we put in place largely to try to keep the Soviets in check. I just think that's all gone now. Right, any semblance that there was any credibility of the UN and their ability to be intermediaries or pass international laws that people were going to listen to or care about, Putin threw him out the door going into Ukraine. We didn't entirely throw him out the door going into Iraq because we did a little bit of coalition building before we did that.
Right.
But Iran, we just said, hey, we don't really care what the IN has to say or the UN has to say, we're going in. Obviously, Venezuela, we're not talking to the UN about any of that. We really don't care what comes out of the UN.
No.
I just think for everybody's sanity on the international stage, we just need to take a step back and be like, yeah, that's dead. We're back to just good old-fashioned build your military alliances, build your team, build your allies, and try to make it to where your enemies would be greatly harmed if they attacked you.
Yeah, I do agree with that. I mean, the liberal economic order, I do feel in many ways is kind of falling apart in this new era of politics. And I mean, the UN has been, is essentially just like it's like NATO, but even worse because it doesn't have an army. And I think Dave Chappelle said it so well.
Right.
Like, hey, you should sanction me with your army. Wait, you don't have one, right? And so they have, and the UN works to a certain extent in some instances, and that's that's fine. But it's like our biggest adversaries are, yes, they're on like a Security Council, but like they don't care about the UN. Right? I mean, they just do not care, right? They go there and they care to the extent that they can have Zimbabwe or something, present a poison pill to something that we want to get done in there, right? It's just a total headache. This Pax Americana, American imperialism is to a certain extent, really, we're at this point where we have to embrace it and we have to realize that that is in our best interest. I mean, for a plethora of reasons, right? And I mean, I knew this when I joined the military when I was 18 years old. Like, yes, I essentially joined because I wanted to travel and party, but I knew I was joining because
I like your honesty.
Yeah, I mean that's the truth. Oh yeah, you're gonna get your college degree and all this. Okay, great, but I wanted to travel and party. But I knew going in, because I'd already kind of been plugged in, like the U.S. military is a large organization, and we park, a couple acres of, foreign soil, the aircraft carriers off people's coasts, say you will trade in U.S. dollars. And that's what keeps our economy strong. It is the world currency. And you can ask Gaddafi, like, what he started trying to trade his oil in euro or something like that. And that was, the Chinese were there the day before this raid happened. They showed up, and I guess they were trying to plan this for a couple weeks, and they kept having like weather delays and whatnot. But that was a very clear sign to Russia and China: stay out of this area.
Yeah, this is where, I mean, again, being a neoconservative, it's good for us and it's good for the world when America is the world police.
Yeah.
I mean, it just is, because the thing about that is I mean, would it be great to live in a world where that didn't have to be the case? Absolutely.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Would it be great to live in a world where we didn't have to spend the money on the military? We didn't have to spend the money on the research and development. We could just sort of live here peacefully. But that's not how any of this works. The moment that we take a step back off the international stage, others assert themselves on the international stage.
Yeah.
And that's not good for us. And honestly, it's not good for the world, because we're not the bad guys. Like, America, we're not looking to actually go conquer other nations. Like, as powerful as our military is, we're not trying to make Venezuela our 51st state, right? No. We're not rolling into other places and just being like, mine.
Right.
Even when we went into Iraq and Afghanistan, in both of those instances, the ultimate goal was, we're going to come in, change the regime, build you up, and then we're going to go home and trade with you.
Yeah.
We know now we're going to have a democracy in the region. We want that, all that stuff. Didn't work. But again, the goal was not to expand the American empire to where the sun never set on American colonies.
Right. Yeah. We weren't trying to rebuild the British Empire in the sense
Right.
of how they built it. Yeah.
And we are unique in the sense that we have this amount of immense power, but we're not doing that. Mm-hmm. Like, we legitimately are saying we would rather Venezuela become a really successful and flourishing country in South America.
Yes.
Because we will get an indirect benefit from that.
Yep. Kind of the.
But we're not going to sit there and just take the country over and make that, America South.
Kind of, yeah, exactly. Kind of the a rising tide raise all boats kind of mentality, and it really would. I mean, Venezuela has lost almost a third of their population. People leaving Venezuela because of the conditions that have happened there, and that's actually one thing I'm really excited about. Is that, hey, if things start turning around, like, it's time to go, right? It's time to go take everything that you've learned back in America and all these things and go back to Venezuela and, kind of help rebuild your country.
And I love the fact, I like the fact that the same people that were arguing that things were so terrible in Venezuela.
Oh, yes, that's
that
rich.
We have to take these refugees in, and we have to take in Venezuelan refugees. And it's cruel, and you should cry about people getting sent back to Venezuela. It was that bad there. And so then we removed the person largely responsible for that, and still that was the wrong answer. Right, this is where, when you start looking, I saw a video of one of the, Free Maduro marches that was happening in some major American city.
Sure.
And boy, wouldn't you know that, I don't know, maybe 15-20% of the people that were in that march were wearing the black and white scarves for Palestine. Mm-hmm. It's the same Marxist. There's just the group of people that just hate Western civilization.
Right.
It doesn't really matter what we do as Western society. If we don't remove Maduro, then we are propping up and turning a blind eye to an evil dictator.
Right.
And then we remove Maduro, and this is a terrible act of aggression and war, and you're, a colonialist and blah, 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 blah. Like, it doesn't matter. There's a group of people, it doesn't matter what we do, they're going to hate America. We are lucky to have the First Amendment, so those morons get to go protest and say whatever stupid stuff they do. Mm-hmm. But it's not legit. And that's where you can look at some of these arguments being totally incongruent and say, you're not a legitimate person talking about this. Like, I don't want to hear you talking about needing to bring in Venezuelan refugees because it's so bad, but then also whining when we got rid of Maduro. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, this administration has put, especially, like, for instance, Chuck Schumer, he has put him on the back foot so many times where he's not being hard enough on Maduro. He needs to do something about Maduro. Then he does something about Maduro, and now it's, that was illegal. Well, exactly. It's like he got something done, but it wasn't quite the way that they wanted done, or it's just all acting. It's, it's like, hey, what do you want to eat? Well, I don't know. Then you buy something. Well, that wasn't what I wanted. It's like,
that's actually
okay.
A great analogy.
Before the Iran thing and the Ukraine thing, I had been very, not isolationist, but non-interventionalist. But the way that we have, I say the Trump administration has conducted themselves and playing offense through these different areas of conflict, has really kind of moved the needle for me. It's like, okay, that is not my idea of that kind of changes the definition, I think, of non-interventionalists, where a lot of non-interventionalists are saying, okay, well, I think, sending like weapons and drones to Ukraine is okay. I think the airstrikes on Iran was okay. And I think that shift has happened lately just because Iraq and Afghanistan was so bad.
And Vietnam.
And
we can't
Vietnam.
forget about Vietnam.
Cannot forget. Yeah, I mean, and that's still a very large voting class.
Right.
A lot of the anti-war marches are still a lot of overlay with the Free Maduro people as well. But their ideas were shaped by terrible wars, where it was like, we shouldn't have gone in there. We shouldn't have done that. That was not, and it was bad because one, we didn't win, but two, it was just bad the way it was handled. There was a lot of corruption. There was a lot of bad moves, and a lot of lives, lost and destroyed. But this right here is like, lots of weapons to Ukraine. I'm not super excited about that, but like, an attack run on Iran, okay, a absolutely flawless campaign to take a head of state and arrest him, and there's absolutely zero casualties. I mean, there's not even a report of someone stubbing their toe.
Well, I think there was some injuries.
No, Chris, there's not even a report. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, no, there was essentially like no one got shot, no one got killed,
no one died.
No one died. And that's huge, because if someone would have died, this whole story would be different. And like that person that died would have been like the best person you ever met in your life, and they lit up the room and yada yada yada. And it's like, I'm just gonna say this because I'm in the military. I can talk about this. Like, they probably were just hanging out at the bars all the time, and that's totally fine. But it's always like the nicest people that die. It's never like when I die, don't say this was the nicest person be like, that guy was a complete wise ass. So,
I mean, I think anybody that watches this podcast, that is not part of my.
Yeah, I don't know.
My intro to you is not Mr. Nice Guy.
I don't know. That's just what I think every time I read someone's obituary. I'm like, were they really though? Like, honestly. Anyways,
well, so you bring up an interesting point, and this I think is a problem that we have with the two-party system in the U.S. and the need for there to be like unity on everything that's done for each party, is that you cannot. Everything has to be one extreme or the other.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a matter of you are either in favor of intervention, like foreign intervention, which means you're ready to send everybody back to Afghanistan, right? Or you're a total isolationist. We just need to sit here on our own continent. We've got two oceans and some cold stuff and some hot stuff, and we'll just post up here, and we don't, we'll spend that money here in the U.S. That's going to save it. The $3 billion that we give to Israel is going to totally change American domestic policy and get us out of that funk with the deficit. You can have multiple options, right? You can have interventionism that is not total military invasion every time we want to do something. Mm-hmm. It can be like Trump has done it. This is, again, why giving money to people like Israel and giving money to people like Ukraine, armament and all that sort of stuff. Hey, that's great. They're our allies. They're fighting some of our enemies for us. Mm-hmm. How much do you think that the U.S. military has benefited from seeing the war in Ukraine? From being able to understand the limitations of Russian technology, to be able to understand their battle tactics, to be able to understand, hey, well, actually, if we are in a hot war with drones, what does this look like? Mm-hmm. What's going to happen to our Abrams tanks with drones? Is it great that there's a war in Ukraine? No, but is it better for the U.S. for Ukraine not to get steamrolled by Russia? Yeah. Is it worth spending some money to do that? Mm-hmm. Yes. Has our military greatly benefited from the intelligence that we've learned? Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, we probably actually use that intelligence on this raid when it comes to the anti-air missile defense, which we completely skirted. We located it, and I'm not talking about the ones that were like on the beach. I don't know if you saw this. That was the dumbest. And if I was one of those soldiers, I would be pissing my pants. Be like, this guy is putting me on the beach with like some World War II crank four-barrel gun. Like, I'm gonna shoot down an F-35. Like, dude, what? Right. I mean, he just kind of like, I don't know. It was really pathetic. But yes, and we actually started selling our Abrams tanks with the information we got from Ukraine, which is great because Taiwan bought them. But yeah, it definitely is worth it to a certain extent. I mean, obviously, you can always put in caveats like, oh, I wish that there would have been an inspector general in there. We could have seen 100%. Where it went. I wish that for the biggest complaint with the money to Israel is like there's no oversight. We can't see what they're doing. They don't necessarily spend it all in the U.S. And I mean, there's like little things you can point out in each thing, but in general, or generally speaking, like yeah, it is a net. I do think it is a net positive. But again, I think when we kind of step back, all that pushback was because it is hard to trust politicians. In fact, I think you're kind of dumb if you trust politicians. The amount of pushback, I think, has led this administration, Trump, to make the decisions that he's made. I think if there was no pushback from the base, that maybe he would have gone a little bit farther. But they know they have to play a balancing act with the base. And so all these, my point is, again, kind of like what you were saying, it is a full spectrum, not an absolutionist idea when it comes to these different conflicts.
I think part of it's just, it is kind of, Trump jokes about having the Monroe Doctrine, right? The old Monroe Doctrine, which is we don't allow any other major powers to be in the Western Hemisphere. Originally for like France and Spain and England, and then for the Soviets, and now for China and things along those lines. But part of the way that Donald Trump has always done these sort of military things, even like with Soleimani, that's different, is he'll just say, okay, go do it. I think this is another reason why the Trump administration has been so successful in brokering deals in the Middle East and finding peace deals for different nations and stuff like that, because they don't roll in with like this stodgy academic international relations, I learned this in school,
John Kerry
protocols,
yeah,
right? Which are fine. Look, having those sort of protocols has been a net good for human civilization, right? Like we sort of normalize some of these conflicts, we normalize what we're going to do, all that sort of stuff. But an overzealotry to abiding by all of those protocols, and not every once in a while just sitting down and saying, hey, I don't care if y'all hate each other or not, but there's money to be made for both sides here. So why don't we reach an economic deal? You can both deeply not like each other's religions, but why don't you make a little bit of money with each other? Because it's there to be made. Right. Which I feel like is kind of what, Kushner has done in the Middle East. The same thing with Trump with these military things. Oh, we need to get rid of Maduro? Let's just do that. What if we just load some dudes up on some hell? I'm not saying that Trump came up with a plan, but like, I think this whole sense of like, yeah, why are we like worried about all this other stuff? Like, we're not going to enter World War III with Iran. Just go blow up the site.
Right. Yeah. Like, okay, that is we're worried about them having nuclear materials that they can make, like, and there's plenty of arguments for both sides, but like, just take that out and then like, let's move on. Let's put a great spin on it, get some good PR on it, and then move on. And really, we haven't really talked much about Iran since that day. I know it keeps kind of popping up, like rearing its head, and I don't know if it will ever go away, but hopefully that's what happens with Venezuela, and the people that now have essentially woken up to a new position in life can kind of do the things that they've been wanting to do, waiting in the wings.
That's the good thing about the internet. Stuff like Elon Musk and Starlink or different things like that makes the internet more accessible in different places. Is it's hard for these regimes to keep it will continue to get harder and harder for these regimes to keep their people down. Right. Because you can't isolate them from the rest of the world. I mean, if you want to make living in Iran under the Ayatollahs seem like a good idea, just like with North Korea, you kind of have to isolate all of your people from the rest of the world. Right. Because once they start seeing the rest of the world and what goes on in the rest of the world, your propaganda is not going to be able to stem the tide of that. You saw that with the Soviet Union. Once the Soviets started seeing how Americans actually lived and not this propaganda that they were getting for their country, it was like, well, I want that. I want a piece. You tell me I can go to the grocery store and they've got like multiple types of apples. The
bread waits on you. You don't wait on the bread.
Right. That sounds great. Let's do that. So I'm all for it. I very much don't want to send boots on the ground anywhere in the world unless it's, absolutely necessary for national security. But, we got all those B-2s. Yeah. We're going to lose them here soon. Yeah. So, we might as well take care of the business that needs to be taken care of as long as we're doing so judiciously.
Yeah. And I mean, that's kind of the interesting part about the story is like we're living through the story, like we are a part of the story, and every day it kind of develops a little bit more. And Trump will, we're going to run the country, and it's like, well, I mean, when he says stuff like that, then it makes it hard for like this lady that just stepped up to power, and I think Maduro's brother-in-law or something that's like in charge of essentially the Congress, to try to be like, no, like we're going to resist, and like, yeah, we're going to get our boss out of jail, but really they don't care. Like they probably are happy about this situation. Like, boom, now we're in power. We've been talking about we want to do this, and this. We can do these things. They do have what seems to be some insurgencies like in and around the borders of their country. It looks like there's some fairly large groups that kind of go back and forth between Venezuela and through the jungles of the bordering countries and stuff.
Right.
Those are things that they're going to have to watch out for. But I mean, essentially the wealth is on the coast and in the water. And so, and what we care about really too is there. So it seems like this could, I think there's a higher likely chance of it working out in the benefit of us than not.
I like the idea of the oil and gas industry showing up in Venezuela, going to the people that are currently in power and saying, how would you like to be insanely wealthy? We can help you do that.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they're going to do.
Your people will be thrilled that they don't have to live under socialism anymore, and you can tax whatever we're doing, and so your government can have this great stream of income. We're going to come in here, we'll take all this oil off your hands, all this heavy crude off your hands, and we'll make you insanely wealthy in the interim.
Yeah, and immediately.
Oh, the U.S. won't kill you.
And the U.S., yeah, exactly. You can stay right where you're at. I mean, that's kind of the ultimate thing. I don't know if that's how they start off the conversation, but maybe that is. I've never been in one of those rooms, but yeah, obviously the relief that they can give them immediately through the embargoes and the sanction. I mean, regardless, if they don't want to work with the U.S., the Navy is still there.
Right.
Like their oil still is not going anywhere.
Right.
Right. It's like they're kind of in a pretty tight spot. And so obviously, and we could just send food to them immediately. And so I think that there is going to be a positive. So I think you opened the door for that one was the crude and where it needs to go and how that is going to, one, affect Texas, but then larger just the country in general and the economy. I don't know if, I'm sure everyone has noticed. I noticed today I paid exactly $2 a gallon. I was very excited about that. Congress can do tax incentives and tax cuts and this and that. And, we can do all these things down in Austin, but really one of the biggest things that can impact your life is the gas price.
Right.
The cheaper the gas price, the cheaper obviously your daily commute, but everything else in your life that you buy gets cheaper because of transportation cost.
Right.
And so going from $2.75, $3 to, $2 to possibly even lower, is going to have a massive impact on Texas, our lives, the midterms, and all kinds of things.
So here's a question that I don't know the answer to, but my first concern is my friends that work in the oil and gas industry are not happy with what the cost of a barrel of oil is right now.
Yes.
And so part of the question that I have with the effect that it has on Texas is, we've been running these big budget surpluses in the state that let us do cool things like pay down property taxes and justify big spending on certain things like that. Are we still going to have those if the price of oil gets too low?
So it could, if it's not handled correctly, I think that yes, you could end up being very detrimentally negatively impacted. But I think we learned our lesson when Saudi Arabia started flooding the market. And if you remember, like all the oil rigs laid over, like they stopped drilling because they couldn't compete, right? I forget exactly what year that was, but out of that came fracking. They're like, okay, we got to figure out what we got to do here. And they started experimenting with fracking. So, and what that did was made the oil producers more lean. Now, how lean can they possibly get? Probably not too much leaner. Under $60 a barrel, they really do start to struggle. So in somewhat form or fashion, they will have to be subsidized because it is a national security issue to have them start shutting down. That's not a good thing. So we will have to subsidize them. Texas actual revenue will not. I think it actually could be a positive because we're going to have more heavy crude coming into the refineries and being, I'm just kind of spitballing here, but more heavy crude coming into the refineries. That's kind of the only type of crude oil that they can process. They can't process this, I guess, more high quality or cleaner types of fuel that they're pumping out of the ground inside the United States. They actually have to send that to other countries to be processed, and those countries send us the heavy crude. But I'm thinking the tax revenue actually goes up off those sales. I don't know if it balances out, but for sure we'll have to do something to make sure that, I think there was something like 600 oil wells, that go from spot to spot. They make the well, they put the, they keep moving. I think there's about 600 operating right now in the state of Texas. Could be wrong on that. That was a quick Google. But when I first heard that number, I thought that was kind of low. But
right now, West Texas crude is 57 to 57.32 a barrel. Brent crude is 60 to 61.87.
Right. And we trade off the WIT.
WTI,
Yeah, WTI. And so I do think that there should be, if we're going to go down this big road of, Chevron's going to go in and we're going to, set up the new pipelines there. We're going to get they were at their peak. Venezuela was pumping out like 3.5 million barrels a day, and now they're down to like 1 million. If you can get them back up to that drastically affects the price. I do think something needs to be done to, maybe not just like subsidize the entire industry. I mean, they do have to compete to some extent, but having what happened when Saudi Arabia flooded the market and they all just went broke and went out of business, and then those rigs just laid and rotted for several years until it kind of came back, I think that would not be good. So that is something that could negatively affect Texas if it's not handled correctly.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of subsidizing.
I know, but it's
like
kind
maybe tax incentives or something like that. I mean, I'm sure there's creative ways that we can do it, but
yeah. I mean, it's kind of like a national, I look at it as like a national security type situation of like, hey, we build up Venezuela again and now they're pumping out all this stuff, but then now we're back to being a net importer of energy rather than a net exporter.
Right.
And so then we're back to that whole situation. So, and plus, I mean, companies invest based off of, 10, 15-year pipelines, especially big projects like that. We've had companies invest big pipelines up north, trying to redo refineries and all these things, not thinking, oh yeah, Trump's going to go kidnap, arrest a leader of a foreign country and then take all their oil. Like, that's not in the books of anyone doing any analyzing of any kind of deal. So I think that there is kind of a moral obligation there in some way. Maybe moral is not the right word, but you know what I'm getting at.
Well, this is where I think just the overall, look, I want us to build way more nuclear power plants.
Got to happen.
That is what I want to see happen. Like, that's a big part of energy policy for me. I would love to see a situation where, the U.S. is a world leader in nuclear plant technology and development, and we get to send our engineers all over the world to build stuff and have a huge industry in that. And then I'd also like at the same time, because we're doing so well in that we can start exporting natural gas to third world countries that need to stop burning wood and coal. And now here we can help you, still be 60 years behind the curve, but here buy our natural gas.
Yep. I mean that's better than 300 years behind the curve. If you go to Africa, they're still in huts some places, and it's just like, it's because it's because of the lack of energy.
Right.
It's like the higher the energy, Venezuela actually is we're talking about this. Venezuela is like the one country that bucks that trend. They have so much energy, yet they're just so broke. And that's just simply due to political corruption.
Yeah, that's what communism, socialism gets you.
Yeah.
You throw a little Marxism in there, and that's sort of what happens.
Absolutely.
As opposed to, which is sort of interesting because it kind of shows that, you'd rather have a king than a socialist dictator. The kings in the Middle East are doing pretty well, and they're a lot of people are doing pretty well. I mean, I don't want to go full Tucker Carlson and sing the virtues of Middle East forms of governance, but they generally are doing better than people in Venezuela.
Right.
Although I guess kind of the counter to that is that they just don't consider a lot of people to be people, so they don't care how they're doing.
Yeah, it is. That is going to be interesting. I think, there's also the dynamic, these countries that we're talking about in the Middle East. I mean, they have like such small populations that and the amount of energy that they have. Venezuela could be something like that. I mean, it could be an incredibly prosperous country, not just based off the oil, but the oil money allows you to just invest in so many other things, right? And they have a great location in country, in the Caribbean, in the trade.
Right.
I mean, they have natural resources. They all have a lot of great things going for them. And so I think the future looks bright. I mean, South America is looking better and better, in Argentina and Chile. Brazil is doing okay. We'll see how Venezuela turns out. I think the biggest question now is like, obviously what happens with Venezuela, but then like Mexico, right? Like we've secured the border and like we've had some disagreements and whatnot, but like the actual issue with the cartel state, like just south of our border, is like, what are we going to do with that? Or like, what is going to be done with that, if anything at all? If like, we're just kind of like, all right, cool. Well, you guys just stay down there. We'll stay up here. Like, it's all good. But I don't know. We'll see. I mean, prediction, do you think this is kind of like the last major international move before the midterms?
before the midterms. Okay.
Yeah.
No, I don't.
Okay.
Look, at some point we're going to have to do something real to push China off of Taiwan. Like at some point we're going to have to do something to make them uncomfortable. I don't know what that is, but
This was something.
I mean, it is, but it's not. I mean, they're not worried about us going and getting Xi Jinping in the middle of the night. So it's like, yeah, we cut off them having some access in our hemisphere, which is great. We should do that. But my thing is, you know, you've got China doing live fire military exercises simulating the invasion of Taiwan.
Over Taiwan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like they're doing it for a reason.
Sure.
You know, I mean, they're not I don't see them doing that just for the fun of it, because the other part of it is, and this is the reason we would really care, is there's that whole building microprocessors and stuff that they do there. The microchip stuff they do in Taiwan is really critical to the world. Getting more and more critical now that we're having all of these shortages caused by AI. And the more that I've looked at like the what the market, because I mean, look, the dummy in me, the you know, the guy from Callisburg is like, well, why don't we just build the microchips here? And then you look at what is required to build the microchips and how difficult and expensive and all that sort of stuff is. And it's just like, yeah, you can't just set one of those up.
We have been trying for years, and yeah, they have very quickly found out. It's like Taiwan is such a unique setup that they have built over 20 years of like a completely, I've watched so many documentaries on this of like, they have like, people have these shops in their homes that like, they'll get a call, they'll jump on their bike with their tools and go because that family knows how to work on this water filter, and like this water filter needs particular parts with the type of water they have in that area and stuff. It's so like, just to, like you said, to pick that up and just drop it in Arizona or Sherman, Texas, it's not that easy.
Right.
So, and I'm actually really surprised about how long it's taken us. We are progressing. I mean, you saw the announcement with Texas Instrument in Sherman. It's finally open and they're going to start. But again, that even like saying it's open, that's going to take forever to start actually getting a good output there.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's really difficult, and it's a huge international asset. If all of a sudden China is controlling all of that, that has a huge impact on the rest of the world, a huge impact on us very specifically. So it's, I think something's going to happen there. I'm not saying China's going to invade Taiwan by the midterms.
Yeah.
But there's something's going to happen over there.
Something is going to happen. And it's kind of like this odd thing where, I mean, internally, you know, the Trump administration with trade and tariffs and trying to balance this thing out and bring industry back, and, you know, $17 trillion of you know, investments, or people saying they're going to invest or they're actually building things. It's like, has just hit absolutely every roadblock possible. I mean, the DC apparatus has put up every single thing they can. The you know, the lawyers, the judges, the political class. I mean, everyone is just like, we're just gonna, no matter what, or no matter if even it's a good idea, we're gonna make sure that it doesn't happen. And it's like, you guys do understand like that what is happening, and it's not even, they're not even on the same team. It feels like sometime, because Republicans will be more than happy to say, hey, the CHIPS Act, which was under Biden, was a great bipartisan act. Right. And it's like, they'll be like, you know, you say that to someone that's, you know, I guess on the left, however you want to define that, they're like, they'll either be surprised you said that, or they're going to be like, yeah, that's right. And so like you kind of try to reach out and be like, yeah, no, Biden did this great thing. I think that was an amazing first step. You know, that's awesome. And then it's like, they don't reciprocate at all. They just go, yeah, exactly. And that's why I'm right and you're wrong. And you're just like, oh my gosh, I don't even know why I tried to do this over vacation.
Well, I mean, that's kind of the problem with talking with people that are interested in politics, is once your political affiliation becomes part of your personal identity, it's impossible, right? I mean, once it becomes part of your identity, what can you really do? You're trying to fundamentally change who that person is, part of who they see themselves to be. So, yeah, that's why you just gotta. It's nice to have conversations with people that aren't necessarily super keyed up on politics, because I mean, I've got a couple of friends that are very, very smart. They are aware of current events. They're aware of what's going on, but one political party or the other is not who they are as a person. And they are definitely the epitome of the, show me the data, let me look at each issue. Those people, those are the ones that you try to talk to.
Yeah.
But this is also going back to what we talked about in the past, the need of, as Republicans, to win the battle of ideas. So when we're talking about international relations, when we're talking about foreign policy, this is the thing. So historically, I don't know if this is the case anymore. It used to be historically that when a presidential election or when an election was about foreign policy, Republicans would win. If it was about the economy, Democrats would win. And so part of the reason for that is the Democrat message generally being, oh, we're going to tax rich people and give you things, is something that is very easy to understand. It's really easy to put into a soundbite, and it's effective. The Republican foreign policy of typically, we've got the biggest military in the world and we're just going to blow them up. If we don't like what they're doing, we're going to blow them up. That's what we're doing. As opposed to the Democrats more, we're going to, have the diplomacy and this and that and all that. Yeah, it's really easy for people to get behind. Bad guy, blow him up, you got my vote.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's still the case. I don't know if that holds because there's so much more access to information. And I think everybody's gotten better at memeing, not in an entertainment standpoint, but being able to distill some of their ideas down in an easily digestible way.
Yeah. Meme information, and the right has done very well on that. Well, and I think the polling kind of at least shows on the latter part of, every time Trump does this type of thing, maybe not in Ukraine. I mean, at first it was, but that kind of died off. But like the Iran thing and now this thing, I mean, his poll numbers have jumped. Right. And so I think that people do just kind of look at the people that are living their day-to-day life. They go, yeah, Iran with nuclear weapons, even though there's so much minutia and, fine points on the thing, they don't care and they don't know. And it's like, dude, they're trying to get from work to soccer practice.
Right.
And all they hear is, why would Iran with nuclear weapons? No. Oh, it was one night and we dropped a couple bombs and, that was it. Cool. Like poll number up. Maduro arrested legally. Okay. He will be found guilty. And people are like, good, right? No one died. Good. So
I think that's part of that's part of the philosophy of Trump being a real estate business guy, right? So mostly in politics, if you preserve the status quo, you can stay employed for as long as you want to, right? I mean, there's the people that are currently making the money are happy with the status quo. Just keep doing. There's no risk to it, right? The risk is to change things.
Right.
The risk is to take action in Iran. What's not risk? To sit there and complain about the threat of Iran's nuclear program and fundraise off of it and do whatever. No risk there. You can do that all day long until Iran drops a nuke. The difficult thing, the thing that takes a lot of, some cojones, especially in politics,
right,
is to go take action and is to say, okay, well, we're going to blow up their nuclear, facilities. Or it would be easy to just let Maduro be down there, make his money, ruin his people. But you know what? You're never going to lose an election because Maduro's still in office.
Right.
The risk is you get rid of Maduro and you don't know what happens next. Or you try to get rid of Maduro and you fail, right? That's the risk. And that's why a lot of Trump being, and this is, total psychoanalysis from somebody unqualified to do so. If you're a business guy, if you're Trump, if you're a mover and a shaker, so the status quo is death, right? If you just stay pat and you just stay with the status quo, you will become irrelevant and it'll just, anything you built will erode away. You have to be taking risks. You have to be taking chances to develop things. I think that's a fundamental difference in how he looks at the world as opposed to a lot of other more traditional political types.
Absolutely. Yeah. Trump staying still is death to him. I mean, and I don't mean that. I mean, like, physically, mentally, he cannot stop moving.
Right.
And when people are like, hey, just stop, just sit down. That is him dying. Right.
Right.
And it real quick, and I don't think this has been touched on like almost at all. Everyone's like, hey, we got him, we were in, we were out. The risk that was taken on that was very extensive. It was very extreme risk with the helicopters in particular.
Right.
The F-35s and the missiles and everything, whatever.
F-22s, yeah.
That's like nothing. Like those aren't going to get shot down, right? They could, but really not people don't realize how often helicopters break down or helicopters crash. In fact, one just crashed in Afghanistan a couple of days ago, right? And so those things are not foolproof. If you look at the mishap reports on those things, they crash all the time. So the likelihood, if we remember when Carter tried to get the hostages out of Iran, they all broke down in the desert, right? Or some of them broke down in the desert.
You had the one that broke down or that had a mishap when we got bin Laden.
Right, exactly. So like the fact that they're all in and out, that was a very high risk operation where someone as simple with a handgun could have disabled a helicopter mid-flight, and it could have been a wreck down in the middle of a barrio or something. And
Look at Mogadishu.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So like the fact it was executed so well was great, but like that was a big risk, and it was very calculated, and it was handled very well. But I just want to just throw that out there of like the risk was real, and it was calculated, and it was taken, and it was done very well. And I think again it kind of pulls from all the years of trial and error, unfortunately. But so that's good.
It's also a matter of, this is the sort of stuff where if your military if our focus is to be warriors, right? Our focus is to be good at war and to be able to
study war,
to study war and be good at war. It's not about diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's not about social science experiments. This is like, no, this is what the purpose of this thing is. Let's focus on meritocracy. Let's focus on lethality, and we're going to have good results, as opposed to when you sit there and have, fill in the blank absurdism that was in the military under the Biden administration. It's great to kind of like get back to the core of what the military is for. But I mean, and we could spend a whole podcast talking about this.
Yeah, for sure.
But again, I just think that the American people, you talk about Trump's ratings going up, or his approval ratings going up when he takes these actions, because I think that's what people are hungry for. Like, I feel like the American people are hungry. I know I am hungry for political leaders that are just going to like solve a problem. Right. I don't need you to make the whole world into a utopia.
Right.
But if you could just use some of the trillions of dollars that you have and just fix this thing, that would be wonderful.
Yeah.
And there's certain things that the Trump administration does that is very effective on that. Just solve this thing.
Yep, absolutely.
We just need to solve Somali fraud in Minnesota, which, we haven't really gotten into that. I don't think we have time to talk about that tonight. But I mean, there's another example of like, hey, could somebody just do their job, please? Like just a little bit. Right. How many billions of dollars is the state going to send out the door for these programs? And it's just like literally no oversight.
Right. And
you just sent an email or something. Like, I don't know.
And I mean, so, and people will try to be like, oh, Nick Shirley, that was his name. He's going, that's old news. No, Minnesota already, the food for whatever and the $7 million fraud and everything like that. Okay, well, what happened to that? Those people were found guilty by a jury of their peers. And what happened? A liberal judge kicked the case out.
Right.
Saying, hey, you know what? These people are voting the way I want them to vote. I mean, that's how I'm taking it. These people are voting the way that I want them to vote. I'm not going to hold these people accountable.
Right.
And that just opens up the door. And Nick Shirley, good on him. He put a fine point on it and just got it in everyone's face. Like the information was already out there, but he just got it in everyone's face. And I think that over the next 6 months, I mean, if you're committing some kind of fraud, it's going to be a really hard 6 months for you, because he has activated so many people that wanted to get involved or expose something or just wanted to see an arrest. And they're like, you know what? I'm going out. I'm going to find this. I'm going to go. I know something's wrong over there. I mean, you're going to see hundreds of these cases, and the evidence is going to get so overwhelming that hopefully, we'll see if the FBI will do something, if DHS will do something, if the DOJ will do something. I think the problem is the lag there between there's an issue, let's open up an investigation, people are arrested, people are held accountable. It's fairly long. But we'll see how many of these people are actually held accountable, if any.
Controversial opinion. I don't want federal law enforcement. Right? Like, I don't like the idea of having a federal police force that's going to go enforce the law in all the states.
Right.
So I I want the Texas Rangers and I want our law enforcement to be handling things.
I think Texas would do, but like
I do too. But I mean, like that's I will have to say, like that's a bit of a quibble that I have with online conservatives right now, who are like, why isn't Pam Bondi doing something? Why isn't Kash Patel doing something? It's like, well, I mean, we don't want them to be out there. I don't want the FBI out in every state enforcing all the laws.
right.
I mean, I want the people in that state to hold their own elected leaders accountable when they don't. And this is sort of like the laboratories of democracy. Okay, look, if the state of Minnesota is going to allow itself to be defunded or defrauded by billions of dollars, if that money is coming from people that live in Minnesota and they're not willing to vote those folks out and they're keeping them in there, well, that's kind of what Minnesota's signing up for. I don't want a system where a strong centralized authoritarian government goes in and says, yeah, I don't necessarily like the way you're doing law enforcement in your state, so I'm going to just kind of do it for you.
I get your point wholeheartedly, and I agree with it. But what are we supposed to do if people are literally found guilty by their peers, so people in Minnesota, and then an individual judge throws out the case?
Yeah, that's for the people of Minnesota to deal with. I don't think that me living in Texas needs to go get involved with Minnesota wasting Minnesota dollars.
Yeah.
And what I want ultimately is I want the federal government to stop giving so much money, spending money everywhere.
Well, that would be a good fix.
Right,
Like
so
that,
it's just
that
like-
would be the fix right there.
I mean, that's my thing about like the keeping the cohesive arguments. It's like, yeah, I don't want that. I don't want the federal government to be giving so many tax dollars to so many states that it incentivizes people to be like, no, I want federal law enforcement in there, because here's the thing: is that a Democrat will be a president again, and we're not going to want heavy-handed federal law enforcement then.
Yeah, because it probably won't be going after Somalis because of the way that they're voting.
Right, because I remember not too long ago when you had heavy-handed law enforcement. Maybe not the FBI, but the IRS hiring tens of thousands of more people and targeting conservative groups and Christian groups and all that sort of stuff.
Do you remember what a bold-faced lie that was? Oh, that's only going to go after millionaires. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
how many millionaires are there? Of course,
Right.
they all started going after everyone that was
Right.
not a millionaire.
And that's my thing. Like, I hate it.
It's a very
I
consistent
hate it.
argument, but like,
I
just
hate that there's fraud in Minnesota. I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
But at some point, I don't live in Minnesota.
you don't.
I hate the stupid laws they pass in California. I'd like for them not to exist.
Yeah.
But I live in Texas and not California for a reason.
Look, it's a consistent argument. I totally understand what you're saying, and I from like I want a smaller government type standpoint, I definitely get that. But it's to the point where in some cities and states, the people that are defrauding the state have such a heavy influence with donations and voting power that it's like, what is there really supposed to happen at this point? Not to say Somalis can they vote the state, right? But I mean, they have a couple Congress people. They can sway a Senate seat or something like that. But like in New York City, for instance, like the voting base there is so heavily. I mean, look how people that aren't born in the United States are voting for how they vote, right? It's like you kind of get to this point where it's so lopsided. I mean, it'd be great if they just cut off all the federal funding, and then yes, people in Minnesota, I think, very quickly would be like, hey, we gotta, and that would change their voting patterns, absolutely. But politically speaking, I think some arrests do need to be made, whether that is for the fraud directly, or where the money was going as well, or who turned a blind eye, like who filed the taxes for these people, like who built the LLCs, who filed the funds to get the money for, like, there's so many layers to this. It's like, and I'm sure it's a very small group of people that are going to be implicated, but it actually has had some political influence. Mr. Walz already dropped out. He's like, I'm not going to run again. And I think, I don't want to say it's an admission of guilt, but I think at least that this has been so bad that his core people are starting to walk away from him. They're like, I don't want to be here when this thing drops.
I mean, look, I'm always going to try to find the easiest solution. Part of the problem with all this stuff is it's just the fascination with race and ethnicity and all of that stuff, where Tim Walz in the Minnesota state government were probably so proud of themselves because they were giving billions of dollars to these immigrant communities. This is the dream.
This is the dream.
The dream is that these people come to America and they're able to prosper, and they're giving things back to Minnesotans. They're providing these valuable services for children and in-home health, and this is the liberal dream for how all of this works.
Yep.
And so when that's the case, you definitely don't want to start analyzing whether or not it's really happening. You, as a matter of fact, you're wrong for doing that. It's racist. You know, the fact that you would say, why would you suspect that these people were committing fraud? Why would you need to audit and investigate them? I mean, we've seen some of the internal, you know, communications where it's like, well, if you go out after us, we're going to go after you for being racist. You know, it's like, that's the kind of problem when you divorce yourself from meritocracy for any reason. You just end up in that sort of like self-biased, self-defeating circle where you can be a sucker. But anyways, well, Kyle, first of the year,
Yes.
first of the new year.
Awesome podcast. Don't be a sucker and come to our event.
Yes. So, you know, Better Texas, we've got lots of stuff coming up this year. Big event we are sponsoring. It's being hosted by the Collin County Young Republicans on February the 4th. It is a full-on debate for the Texas Attorney General. Yours truly will be moderating that debate using some of these Better Conversation learned skills there on the stage with the candidates.
There you go.
So far, you know, we've got 2 of the 4 confirmed. Hopefully we can have 3 of the 4 AG candidates confirmed. You can go to the Collin County Young Republicans website. You can go to abettertx.com. We've got it on the front page. We are also partnering with the Dallas County Republican Party to provide training.
Yes.
Everyone knows the March primaries are coming up. One thing people don't know is there are these things called precinct conventions, and it is the first step on the road to the state convention and having the planks of the party platform and legislative priorities and all that sort of stuff. Well, it starts at your precinct convention. So we're partnering with the Dallas County Republican Party to provide 3 different trainings this month on the precinct convention process. So we'll have one on Thursday, January the 8th via Zoom. We'll have one, I believe, in person on Saturday, January 17th, and then we will have another Zoom on, I think it's Friday, January 23rd. So lots of opportunities. You can go to, again, abettertx.com on our homepage. We have those listed out there. You can also go to the Dallas County GOP website, and they've got their calendar on there as well. So lots of stuff coming up. We have more events coming up in later in February and later in March that will roll out in time. If you are a member of a Better Texas, we have our first general membership meeting of the year on next Thursday, January the 13th. Maybe the 13th.
I don't keep track of
I don't keep track of the date so well, but it's coming
like whether
up.
that's a Thursday or Friday.
I don't know. Maybe it's a Tuesday.
Yeah.
I probably should have checked on that, but go to
fine.
our website. It's on the website. You'll be able to see it. We'd love to have you there. If you're a member, it's a member-only type of event. If you'd like to become a member of A Better Texas, again, go to www.abettertx.com. We've got a Become a Member tab there so that you can join us and support what we're doing.
Yes.
Any other final pieces of wisdom there from the man, the myth, the mustache?
Yes. Go with God and go out and find some more issues and get it out in front of the camera, because that is what this midterm is going to be about, is about politicians not doing anything or turning a blind eye, and it's going to piss a lot of people off, and that is only going to benefit Republicans, because the corruption is happening pretty much under certain party, Democratic leadership, and so that's only going to help us. So let's go find the fraud.
Find the fraud, fight the fraud, save taxpayer dollars.
Yes.
As always, thank you for joining us. Remember, like, share, subscribe, really share this with people that you know so that we can get the word out there. And again, leave us a comment. Let us know if there's something you want to hear us talk about specifically. If there's a guest that you'd like to have on, we've got some guests lined up this month, which we're excited about, and we'll roll that out as well. But again, thank you for joining us here at A Better Conversation.